Okay, this is recording now. Right. So first of all, open your prospector, go to surfaces, right click and create a surface. Choose the default values here and press OK. Now we've got a new surface created here. And when we expand it out, we need to define the elements that make up the surface. The first thing we want to put in is points. And in order to build our DTM, we're going to select the levels that make up that DTM, but we need to put them in a point group. So under the prospector, expand out point groups, right click, make a new one, give it a name. Okay, so DTM levels. All right, and now we're going to add points to the point group. So we can use the raw description, or we can use the include to physically select them in the drawing. So from the raw description, we're going to scroll down and choose the levels. We'll apply that, and then that will populate the point list. Under the point list, we'll just check it just to make sure everything in there is level. Okay. Now, in order to remove some of these, we can go to exclude, select with numbers matching, and physically select the levels in the drawing that we don't want. So in this case, it's the 2 points that we're taking on top of the chimneys. When we've selected those points, we right click. See, the 2 points are selected, and back on the point list, they will now be excluded from this group. Hit apply and hit OK. Now, back over on our surface, go down to the point groups and add in, oops, that jumped. Right click and add the point group that we just created, DTM levels. Select it so it's highlighted in blue, hit apply and hit OK. That's the first element put into our definition. Now we're going to put in the break lines, and we use the line work that's been cleaned up. So we select break lines. Bear with me. Okay. Right click and hit add. Here we want to make sure that we've got just standard break lines. Press OK, and this will allow us to grab a selection set from the drawing. Then we select the line work that's going to make up the surface. So usually this will be your top and bottom of curb, your tracks, your edges of things, the footprint of the building. Okay, and the footprint of the building over here, etc. Get the wall that defines this, your top and bottom of bank. You can add in the veg lines. You select the stuff that makes the most relative or best fit to your surface. Okay, so you need this wall out here, the footprint of the building, etc. Okay, when you've completed the selection set, right click and it'll add the break line set 1. At any time, if you want to add more in, just right click here and hit add, select OK, and then you can always put in another line or multiple lines. It'll just make a second set of break lines in there. All right. The third and final thing we want to do to define the surface is to give it a boundary. And the boundary defines the area of the surface that you can see. So draw yourself a nice neat polyline around the area that you want your contours to be displayed. Right click on boundaries, press add. You don't have to give it a name, but it does need to be an outer surface boundary, and press OK. Now, if you've got it pre-selected, it'll automatically add. Otherwise, you select it in the drawing, right click, and it'll add it here as boundary 1. Now our surface is built and defined. Okay. And what we'll do as a first check on the surface is just right click, select the surface and hit right click and use the object viewer. The object viewer will pop up and it'll allow us to rotate the surface and see it in 3D. Okay. You'll see this time it's much better because I selected the right lines at the footprint of the building. Okay. So this allows us to look for spikes and hollows. Okay, so the like of this. So we can figure out what's going on there. It might be right, it might be wrong. Occasionally things in this object viewer look exaggerated, but it's worthwhile checking them out to see is it right. Okay. So you can see there's a little bit of work to do there, but the path leading up to the house is defined. There's a lot of points in that area where you've done a lot of spot heights. You can see that by the small triangles. All right. And then the clean area, that's the footprint of that shed, etc. So use that to get a visual of what you just did. Look for spikes that'll show you where your errors are. Okay, now we can close that. All right, then when we build the surface and there are errors in the surface definition, the panorama is going to pop up and it's going to be populated with those errors. Now, you'll see that this is a continuous list. So every time you rebuild the surface, this is just going to add more stuff on here. But if you look at the timestamp, that was the surface that was built at 1429. This one was built earlier. This one was built earlier. So the only ones you're concerned with are the last build. Okay, and for each one of them, if we press zoom 2 will bring us on the dead center of the workspace, more or less, to where you've got a crossing break line. So somewhere in there, something's not right, it's not happy with. Resolve it and move on to the next one. Zoom 2, and again, it's taking us to somewhere around the same area. I'm not actually sure what's going on there. Okay, it doesn't look, do you know what it is? It doesn't like things touching. Okay. So 3D line work in surface definition shouldn't actually touch. It's not great. All right. And what we do is we just move through the drawing and you might break those lines, you know, or you might move, you know, if that's a bottom of bank, that should probably be here. So the bottom of bank point might need to move out there. The path point might need to move that way. So you can tweak your points until things are lining up clean. And that is the surface definition. Then the last thing you want to do is annotate the surface contours. All right, and define the surface contour interval. So if we right click and go edit surface style, under the information, it'll tell you what surface style you're using. If you go to contours and contour intervals, you can change the spacing of the contour, the minor and major intervals. So for this one, 250 long with 1 meter, hit apply, hit OK, and that'll change the contour interval. And then when you're satisfied with that and everything's looking good, we'll add labels. So we go to annotate, add labels on our surface and select multiple contours. Now, one thing that I need to show you is when you've got multiple surfaces in your drawing and you do something that's acting on a surface, the first thing it'll do is ask you in the command line to select the surface you want to work with. All right. Select the surface you want to work with. It's the one that's visible on the screen. And to add the contour labels from that command, you just click at the start and end of the line along which you want the contour labels to be added to. Always check that that is displaying a correct value. So somewhere between 34.8 and 34.7. All right. So that's a good contour. Okay.
Yeah. That's perfect. Do you want the contours for the backline? Do we
need the contours for the back plane? Hold on a second.
like, you know, from
I want to stop this recording. I don't know how to do that. Oh, bloody hell. Stop recording.